Hi, I'm Randy Hollenbeck, and this is the Music Roundtable. Today on the show, we have alternative rock artist Trehern.
What's up, Randy? How you doing, man?
Would you sell your soul for a chance to not go under? Are you in control of the things that make you wonder? Would you play a role if it meant that you could get ahead? You could get ahead, would you? And when nothing's still, when the room begins to spin, when we're in the dark, when the walls are caving in, would you? Would you sell your soul?
Good, good. The last time you were on the show, we talked about your song Glass, and it was November 10th, 2022. So it was exactly 3 years ago today.
Wow. No way. Oh my gosh, you're right. What the hell? That's crazy. 3 years ago?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's insane, man. We were connected through Mike with Earshot for that, right? Wonderful, man. What a great guy. I hope he's doing well. 3 years ago. That's insane. Wow. That like threw me for a loop to start this whole thing, man. That's crazy. Wow. I hope you've been well in 3 years then, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm sure we've both grown over those 3 years. So.
Definitely have. Definitely have.
So, what have you learned in those 3 years from being in the music scene and the music industry? Whether it's good or whether it's bad, what are some of the things you've learned?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, the biggest thing that I think I've taken away in 3 years is that this experience is only going to be as rewarding as you allow it to be. And what I mean by that is a lot of artists at this stage, they become discouraged when they don't see results, or they work on the things that they're doing so much to a point where the passion element of it dissipates. And so over the past 3 years, I've worked so hard on music, and I've put a lot of effort and a lot of attention to detail, and it got to a point where the things that I used to be passionate about and I used to enjoy started to feel more like a chore than like a passion, right? To the point where I stopped doing music completely, it felt like, just because of my own reservations and my own headspace on things, and being so much of a prisoner of the moment and having this option paralysis that you know I was completely off the grid for 2024. I did release some singles in 2023, but coming off of Glass, I was expecting things to go a bit of a different way, and um, again, the fun of it started to disappear a little bit. But now, I've learned that again, you can only really have as much fun as you allow yourself to have, and this should be an exciting time. And so, with the release of these new songs and this new EP, and finally embracing the kind of person that I am, the type of music that I love, and the type of things that I want to create, it's reignited this passion in me that I haven't had since 2019, 2020 when I was working on my first record. So it feels great, even though there is a changing of the guard, and everything sounds very different, and I'm saying a lot of different things now, and presenting myself in a new light to people. It's the most authentic that I've ever been, and the most fun that I've had since becoming an artist.
Okay. You said you took like a year off. Did you have to like step back and like try to reevaluate what you wanted to represent or put out? Is that what you were like kind of like going through?
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, I went through a lot of personal situations in late 2023, 2024. I had a lot of life events take place and a lot of things that, opened my eyes to what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be and, the type of life that I wanted to live, right? And a huge part of that, that journey for me, for lack of a better term, was really looking at what I wanted to do with music and who I wanted to be when it came to me as an artist. And I think the thing about these new songs is that they were crafted during a time where those things were creeping up on me, but they weren't in full force. So I know that we wrote, Jonathan and I, is when I say we, I refer to my friend, my producer, Jonathan Dolis. We had written the song Fall With Me in the summer of 2023, and we had written it around the time of a huge life event for me where there were a lot of moving parts, a lot of things were changing. And so we wrote that song to kind of talk about the idea of letting someone just exist in a moment in time and allowing them to be in a space where the only way to get through that moment is to embrace the changing of said moment, right? And so that theme kind of carried over into the later half of 2023 and the early half of 2024 when I had so many things in my life that were changing. And I would keep going back to that song and to the other songs that we had written throughout the year of 2023, being Chasing Ghosts, Would You Sell Your Soul? Um, and was really able to hone in on those meanings and how they've adapted and changed, but also eerily stayed the same. And they kind of guided me throughout the year of 2024 to just take a breather. These songs exist. They're really, really well written songs in my opinion, and they mean a lot to me and they'll have their place. But if I'm going to put them out, I have to be at my best. So, yeah, there was a lot of reevaluation and also just the nerves of presenting this in a new way and in a new light where um, I think the sound is so drastically different that it might be a little bit of a shock to people when they hear it for the first time. And so figuring out how to really present that and put that out there in a way that is, if we're going to do it, we have to do it. We have to do it right. We have to do it in the most authentic way that we can. So not really holding any punches, and just having fun with everything. So does that answer your question? I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but
Yeah. Um, and you just released your new EP, Death of Me, on Friday. It has 5 songs on it. Um, your producer, who did you say you worked with?
I've worked with Jonathan Dolis. He's my producer, one of my best friends. I've been working with Jonathan now since 2018. He was a part of the very first thing that I've ever released, and we've both grown exponentially since then. And now I feel like we're finally in our pocket where we're really excited about what we're doing, but we're also very comfortable and very, very aware of what we can do together. So, yeah, Jonathan and I, we work on everything together. There's nobody else that I'd rather be involved in my process. He's produced everything, mixed, mastered. He's done some co-write with me. Um, we both work on a clothing brand together called Die Empty Clothing Collective. So him and I are like that. That's my guy.
Okay. Like, I know, like, when I work with my producer and stuff, we got close and stuff over all these years that we worked together. So it was like sometimes I would just go in there and we would nothing scratch. And we would just like, okay, here's a guitar part, and then we just start building off of that. What is kind of like your writing style?
It's a bit of both. It's very much a comfort thing when it comes to working with Jonathan and writing with him, where, I could bring in an idea and we can build upon that idea, or we can go into a session and have absolutely nothing prepared and create something that day. Um, this new EP was kind of a hodgepodge of all of that. So the oldest song that was written on this EP is a song called Burning Star, which we had written years ago. We actually wrote Burning Star after we had written Glass in 2022. And then we had written Use Me and Staring at the Sun after Burning Star. And the idea at the time was for Burning Star to kind of, to sit for a little and then eventually to be released after those three, because we personally felt it was the strongest of the four. But ironically, the song being about what it's about with, dealing with imposter syndrome and not feeling up to par in life, I second guessed myself a lot on that song, and it just sat around for years until it was released this year. And um, that's one of those songs where we kept constantly changing it and rewriting it and working on it and making sure that it was perfect. Um, and that idea I already had going into the studio, right? Whereas a song like "Would You Sell Your Soul," that song was constructed from the bottom up in the room within a day. Um, Actually tried a new writing technique lyrically where I just wrote and didn't stop, didn't put the pen down. I kept going, didn't make any corrections to everything. Every single line in that song is exactly as it was when I wrote it. There were no revisions, there was no melody. It's just right. It's a trick that I learned from a friend of mine named Jeff Sayun from a band called Let Live. It's how he wrote for his project Erase Theory, which I took some pointers from. But yeah, I mean, you have examples on both ends of the spectrum, right? But I'm grateful to have someone like Jonathan who is able to encourage both the longer drawn out process and the quickness of going into the studio, and not even just working with him, but co-writing with Cody Heyman from Die Young and Elijah Witt from Cane Hill, who, both contributed to tracks on this record in their own way. It's it's really what comes down to making the best possible song that we can make. That's the route that we go with.
Okay. Is there a theme behind the album?
Yes, there is. There's the theme of essentially beginning from the end. And what that means is, I think this record is a very transformative album for me, both personally and creatively. It's obviously the starting point of a brand new sound and a brand new space that we occupy with these songs, being that they do exist in a bit more of a heavier style of music, compared to the earlier stuff that I've released in the past. But it's also, again, very transformative in the sense that, I started my life over in a lot of ways coming out of 2023 and going into 2024. I went through a lot of really personal changes and um, dove into a lot of personal exploration with myself and the habits that I have and the hopes and the dreams and the fears and all of these things that, are what make me who I am. And so this album touches on all of those things. It was a process. It was very difficult to write at times, but it means so much to me. And I think, the fact that it exists and the fact that it's been released, throughout all those things that I mentioned previously, and again, representing the idea that, sometimes we have to get lost in life to find, the person that we're supposed to become and who we are. And, what does that look like? What does that feel like? How does it sound? All of that went into this record. The artwork of each one of the singles and of the main EP are actually these really deformed pictures of myself that are, altered and edited in a way to where they're almost unrecognizable. And I liked this little nuance of knowing that I'm in there. I exist in that space. But you can't really pick it out. You can't identify it. So it kind of plays into this idea of, what do you do when you don't recognize yourself? What does that feel like? What kind of emotion does that portray? And, you know, again, not necessarily something that I broadcast, but something that for me as a creative and as an artist and as a human being, I like knowing that a part of me exists in that space. Um, so yeah, the theme being ultimately transformation, letting things go so new things can grow in their place, and um, knowing that it's okay to begin inside of the end of something.
Okay. Who did you work with on the album? I know you mentioned Elijah, and did you have like some of your band members come in, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I co-wrote "Fall with Me" with Jonathan and Elijah. Jonathan, obviously, as the producer, he was involved in every single one of those songs, but him and I specifically worked together exclusively on "Burning Star" um, and "Chasing Ghosts." Elijah Witt from Cane Hill, he is a great friend of mine. He helped me co-write "Fall with Me." So he contributed some melody ideas there, and helped tell me when lyrics weren't really that great. He would jump in and give me a hand, and he was a familiar face to write with because he helped write Glass with me. He was integral to that process. So he's someone that I trust and value very much. All of his feedback is exceptional, and he's a phenomenal artist in his own right. Um, and then Cody Heyman from Die Young, he is also one of my closest friends. He helped work on Would You Sell Your Soul with Jonathan and I, and he was instrumental in The Death of Me, the title track. He helped write that with us, and his contributions transformed both of those songs in huge ways. And I'm a pretty firm believer that they wouldn't be what they are today without him. Um, and as a creative, it obviously means a lot to have someone come in and to contribute and to help make your song as great as it can be. But on a personal level, those two songs are probably the most personal for me. Maybe that's a tough one to really say, but The Death of Me for sure is a very personal track, and to trust Cody with that, especially someone who I talk very frequently with, who knows the things that I've been through over the past year to 2 years, for him to come in and to help guide that and to push me to really be vulnerable on that track is, it's a blessing for me. So I worked with the two of them, with Jonathan, and as far as the band goes, they didn't necessarily contribute in the studio, um, but they were very present whenever I was texting them in our group chat and sending different copies of the song and asking them for advice and for feedback. And they were a phenomenal soundboard, and you know have obviously done amazing things to our live show, being present. Jeffrey Fisher on guitar from Rogue, The Arbitrary. Um, and then Jeff Griffin and Corey McLeod from After Dusk. They play drums and bass in the band, respectively, and all great friends of mine. Nobody I'd rather do that with. So, um, yeah, great dudes who played a huge role in bringing all of this to life, not necessarily just in the studio, but in a live setting as well.
Okay. I want to dive into a couple songs. Let's start out with "Would You Sell Your Soul?" You start out with the first line, "Would you sell your soul for a chance to not go under?" And then later on, you say, "Would you play a role if it meant that you could get ahead?" Could you tell me a little bit about those lyrics there?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned previously, that song lyrically was such an experiment because when it comes to writing lyrics, I typically pick things apart line by line. I'm always looking for the right phrase or the right word or the right thing to convey a feeling or an emotion that I have in that time, right? Um, with that song, it was very much a spur of the moment. I'm going to sit in this room and I'm going to write, and I'm not going to stop writing until the song is done. I'm not going to revise anything. I'm not going to pick anything apart. It's just going to be what it is, because that song was a very conscious effort to try something new and to explore a different area of myself as an artist. Those lyrics in particular, I think there's a universal feeling of succumbing to pressure, right? That can be in our personal lives, in our professional lives, in our efforts to achieve certain things. And I think that pressure has the power to change us into different versions of ourselves, right? I think it can make us be, uglier versions of ourselves. I think it can change our habits, our mentality. And I think there are a lot of people in life that they they wonder about, you know, how much of myself can or should I change to get the things that I want in life. Um, So that idea, that lyric, both of those lyrics really are supposed to represent this question that I'm asking, not just to the people that are listening to the song, but to myself of, what would you give and how much of you would you change? Where and how far are you willing to go to achieve this thing that you want, whether it's a feeling or a goal or an object or a person or whatever, or even in that first line to simply not go under, right? To not fall to to below the surface, if you will. Like, um, I would rather die than sell my soul and be somebody that I'm not, which the idea of death and rebirth is pretty important, I would say, to this album's themes. So that line again, just to kind of answer your question in short, is um, how much of yourself are you willing to give to do or to have the things that you want? And is that a good thing? Most of the times it's not. So, um, yeah, pretty deep one there.
Yeah, like sometimes you should like listen to yourself because sometimes there's people around you that don't have your best interest and they could like manipulate you off your course, you know?
Totally. Yeah, completely agree. And I think, I had those experiences too. Those were a part of this past 2 years of reflection is realizing who's in your corner and who's not, and who truly wants the best for you or who's only looking out for themselves and for the things that they want. And, um, that song is kind of indirectly hinting at that too in a lot of ways, of if you're selling your soul, someone's got to be buying it. Who's in control? Are you in control of the things that, and that's even a line in the song itself. Like, are you in control of the things that make you wonder? Are there outside influences that are pushing you to a certain place? And do you really want to go there? Or do you just think that you want to go there because you have people on your shoulder telling you that you do? And for somebody who kind of lost his way and felt like he was being told where to go, what to do in life, the kind of person that he needed to be, um, that song is definitely a commentary on all of that, of just embracing who you are. The fact that it exists is a testament to it's okay to be the person that you want to be in your life, and oftentimes it's for the best.
Does it ever hurt when you think about all that you've lost in the dirt? With the bones, it all comes at a cost. But if you had a chance to rewrite how it ends, rewrite how it ends, would you? And when nothing's still, when the room begins to spin, when we're in the dark, when the walls are caving in, would you give into it? Would you sell your soul? Would you sell your
Okay. Um, the next song is The Death of Me. And I like this one lyric line you put in there. Um, I pour myself into these things that never last. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. um, yeah. So I think the final, I don't know necessarily what the actual step is off the top of my head, but I do know that before acceptance, there is this extreme feeling of denial and rage. And, um, we talk about the theme of this record being rebirth. Well, in order to be reborn, you have to often die or kill a version of you that existed previously. And that song and that line is really about coming to terms with the dying part of that process, right? The letting go, if you will. Um, and I think that process can be, it can be damning and it can be hard and it can be emotional and just really, really difficult to sit in. Um, and so that song and that line in a lot of ways is a reflection of that point in the process where I felt like for a very long time I've been on go, right? I've been constantly going. I've been investing into different things. I've been chasing after dreams, and I've been, investing into friendships, relationships, partnerships, you know, things into myself, right? That I've been putting back into. And I think there comes a point in time, in your darkest moments and when you struggle the most, that you feel as if everything that you're doing essentially has no purpose. And you're just pouring into these things that ultimately dissipate, that never really last, right? And so that song is the biggest cathartic release on this record. It is the admittance of I'm struggling with something. I'm dealing with something that is so hard, and I'm so emotionally exhausted, and I'm tired, and I'm drained, and I'm physically not where I want to be, and mentally I'm far from it as well. And I keep pouring myself and all of my energy and all of my effort and my wants and my needs into these things that never last. They don't stay. Um, which once you come out of that, you realize that it's okay for things to not last. It's okay for things to move on, or it's okay for you yourself to move on and to let these things that hold you down or that bring you pain, to let those things go. But again, you have to have that moment of anger and that moment of, just being really pissed off. You have to have that. And so that was my moment to be angry and to be pissed off and sad and depressed and scared and just unknowing of what my life was going to look like. And so, um, yeah, I think we've all felt that. I think we've all related to that, and I think that's why that song and that line and this record resonates with the people that it resonates with.
Yeah, like you were saying about the death of me, like, do you ever feel like sometimes you're getting pulled back into those same old patterns of your old self?
I think it's too early to tell. I think I think right now, in an ironic way, I think I'm the happiest that I've ever been. I think that I'm the most true to myself. I think that the energy around me and the people that are around me and the circumstances that I'm in right now are really, really good. And I think I look at it that way because I have this newfound perspective, and I've managed to get rid of and cut out all of these old habits that I've had. Um, there may be a time in the future where they rear their ugly head again. And I think the thing, just to be totally candid, I think the thing about people that experience feelings of anxiety or depression or loneliness or whatever have you, I don't think those things ever necessarily go away. I think we learn how to navigate them. I think we learn how to live with them and how to make these experiences as amazing as we can, because we only really get one life, right? Um, and so do I feel like they'll ever return? I mean, of course. I think they can, and I think they will, but I think I'm more equipped to handle them now. And I think for a long time I wasn't. And I looked for a lot of ways to become equipped and to handle these situations. And now um, I truly do feel like I've entered a chapter in my life where I am a new person and where I'm happy and I'm doing the things that I want to do. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to write about things that do piss me off. But I think there's a calamity around this entire chapter and this entire experience in my life where I went through hell to become my happiest. So
I drown in distraction and I'm losing track of days. Can't find motivation just to keep my head above the waves. How can I save this path I pave when nothing stays?
What's your plans coming up for 2026?
Lots of cool plans. So we're not even really done with 2025 yet, which is the really cool thing. I can't say much about it, but I do know that there was a bit of a shock for some people with the way that things have changed and the way that things sound now. And there's a lot of people that really like the old stuff. And so to those people, I would say be patient because there is a little bitty surprise left for the end of the year that I think you'll enjoy, or maybe you'll hate it even more than you hate this, but we think it's really cool and you should stick around for that. So that's, there are cool things planned for the end of 2025 on top of this release for the new EP. For 2026, I know that we've got some shows in the pipeline. So the live shows will be back in full force. We've got a really fun one planned in a couple of months that hopefully is going to be announced pretty soon. But it's with some incredible bands that I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about. Um, I know that I plan on being back in the studio next month. So we're already going to be getting on top of new music and figuring out where to go from here. And then we have sessions lined up in 2026 too. So there's not going to be any shortage of music this time around. I know that it was a long time in between releases from this record and from Burning Star in April to whatever the last release would have been. I think Use Me in 2023. So I know there had been an entire gap, and that will not be happening again this year. But yeah, ultimately, really, really excited. Shows, new music. Um, Hopefully, get some new merch out there for people to pick up if they want to support and they want to get some new clothes. But yeah, overall, just really, really, really excited for 2026. I think it's going to be even better of a year than 2025 was, and this was an awesome year. So
Okay. I've noticed that you work with like other bands on different things like Sequoia and Archers. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do for them?
yeah, so it really depends on the artist. I do work kind of in the background of the music industry a bit. I've been doing some things now for quite a number of years. Um, Sequoia specifically, those are some of my closest friends. They're amazing guys and they write phenomenal music. I do pretty much all of the content creation for that band. So I design their artwork, I develop their visualizers, their graphics. I help manage some social stuff, photo, video. I just went on tour with them with Stand Atlantic for the past four dates that they were on. Um, yeah, I do a lot of background work with those guys, and then Archers. I started working with them as of this last year, I think. I can't remember the exact timeline. Forgive me, Grayson, if you're watching this. But I do a lot of design work for those guys as well. So I designed their single artwork and their record artwork for their album Temporary High. I did all of that. I did the vinyl packaging for it. I designed all of the tour stuff that they released. So the big tour flyer with all the dates on it, their backdrop on stage, some different pieces of merch from the tour. I worked on all of that stuff. Um, some of those pieces I did alongside a designer named Ron Totman from Half Measure, who is also incredible. Um, but yeah, I do some things. I'm more of a background player when it comes to that. I don't necessarily broadcast it as much on my music channels and stuff because I feel like those avenues deserve to kind of be uh, separated and explored by people that are interested in one or the other. But it's always nice whenever someone will recognize me from one world and be interested in the other. That's always a great feeling.
Okay. And did they just like reach out to you for that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows everyone in the music industry, so or it's actually funny that you mentioned those two bands in particular because Archers found me through Sequoia because they have a mutual connection. Grayson, their drummer, knows the Sequoia guys, specifically Josh, who was the drummer of the band, and um, they talked about me about getting me involved in a project at one point, and then the rest was history. So. Um, yeah, I mean, it just depends on, you know, who knows who and where people find me. And, I'm very fortunate to to know the artists that I know and to do the work that I do. And sometimes people will ask me on shows that we play with the live band, like, who designed your stuff or who did this? And, I do all of the stuff for myself. I design all of my art, all of my visuals. I edit all my music videos. Like, I'm very involved in those elements. And so people find those things and maybe they want to work with me in that capacity. Or they find me through different bands that have worked with me previously. Sometimes they'll find me through people like Jonathan, who I have a great relationship with. So yeah, it's mostly word of mouth and people that are looking for someone, and just happy to be trusted. That's the biggest thing for me, for bands to. I know how important this stuff is. I know how important it is to put yourself out in a certain way. As an artist, obviously, that's one of the biggest things that I think about. So for other bands to want that from me, to trust me with that part of the process, is extremely flattering and extremely rewarding.
Okay. This question comes up a lot. What do you think about AI and music?
Damn, Randy, you came prepared today. I have a lot of feelings about it. I think that AI is an inevitable. Yeah, how should I say this? We've opened up Pandora's box when it comes to AI, right? It's out there. People are going to use it. It just is what it is. I personally do not champion for AI. I think that I think that AI is taking away opportunities from multiple people in the music industry. It's taking away from designers. It's taking away from, now, as we've seen on different streaming platforms, it's taking away from actual artists and songwriters. Um, yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but I also understand that there's a lot of things in life and in the world today that are unavoidable, that we have to live with, that we have to learn how to live with and navigate through. Um, so I just have to be able to do my part. I have to stay the course. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about AI is that it will completely erase the people that are doing things organically. So even though it's stealing opportunities or taking jobs away or doing whatever it's doing, I don't necessarily think that it will completely erase the people that are in bands, that are playing music, that are writing with their people, that are releasing and creating on their own. So I think it's up to us to continue to do that and to continue to put ourselves out there and to champion the people that are around us that are doing those things at a high level. I think it's important to mention great graphic designers. I think it's important to share content from your favorite bands, to go out to shows, um, especially shows. That's one of the biggest things that AI will never be able to take away from us is, you can't put a computer on stage. I mean, I guess you could if you're running backtracks, but you can't get a computer on stage to play a show for you at that same level and that same capacity that you could with a real genuine live band that can feed off of people, the energy in the room, that can tailor themselves to that entire experience, right? So yeah, like I said, a lot of feelings about it.
They have already started hologram concerts, though.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but it's not real. You know what I mean? It's like there's always going to be that disconnect in the back of your mind that what you're seeing on stage isn't a real thing. It's not something that you can touch or that you can feel emotionally the same way about. Like, I mean, I think about it like when I was young, I saw a Pink Floyd laser light experience at a casino. And I remember it was such a cool experience, but I didn't leave thinking, "Oh my God, I just saw Pink Floyd." Like, and if there were holograms on stage, I wouldn't see them and think that I just watched them play The Wall in full. I would think, "Oh, I watched a hologram play a recording of The Wall." Like, it's in a weird way, it's almost, I don't want to say it's similar because someone will come for me, but it's like whenever you see a band nowadays that their vocalist has passed away and they have a replacement, and you watch them and you think, "Oh, that's not the original singer of X band. That's not the band that I know." It's like And even that, there's a real person that's performing those songs. So even if it's not the same guy or the same woman or anything that you fell in love with, like, it's still something. Versus, I don't know, if you get a hologram of Freddie Mercury, like, you're not watching Freddie Mercury play. So it's just a strange, I don't know. Like I said, I have a lot of feelings about it, but all I can do is champion the people that I know are doing this for the love of the game and from their heart, and, put myself out there in a way that is authentic and genuine, because that's really the argument, right? What is true and real and genuine versus what isn't? We need authenticity in our culture and in our creative spaces. And I'm a huge believer in that.
I search for the soul in me. I can tear it free, cut it open, watch it bleed. Spare me all your sympathy, leave my dignity. Push it